In today's video, we are kicking off part 2 of our 3-part series talking about building a crypto mining rig for $500. So let's go ahead and dive in. Today's video is sponsored by Crypto.co. Crypto.co is one of the leading cryptocurrency merchandising and apparel companies in the industry. They sell everything from t-shirts to hoodies to beanies to mugs and even flags. Huge shout out to Crypto.co for making this video possible. What is going on, miners, and welcome back to the Hobbyist Miner channel. In last week's video, we kicked off part 1 of our 3-part series focusing on building a crypto mining rig for $500. That video was very focused on the beginner, on the investor that only had a small amount of money, about $500, in order to purchase the parts for a crypto mining rig. Well, in that video, if you didn't check it out, I'll put a link in the upper right-hand corner as well as down below. Check it out before you dive into this video, because we talk about what parts you're going to need to build a crypto mining rig, where to go ahead and purchase them, and finally, how to stay within your $500 budget. Well, guess what? The parts that we discussed are in, and in today's video, we are going to be building our $500 crypto mining rig step by step. Alrighty, miners, let's go ahead and dive in. So last week we purchased all these parts, and let's go through them one more time. So here is our mining frame. It was $39.99, and guys, I'm not gonna lie, this frame was the easiest frame I've ever put together. Granted, it's much smaller. I mean, this is very, very small. I mean, here's the motherboard in comparison in size, but the instructions were really good, and the material is actually made of some decent hardware, so I'm really happy with it. So this is like the perfect setup, and I'm really thrilled. I've never used this frame before, but I'm really pleased with this purchase, $39.99. Our motherboard. Now, as we talked about in our last video, the motherboard, the memory, and the CPU, we were able to get off of Facebook Marketplace for $150 locally. Here is our Arctic Alpine 12, and this is our CPU cooler, and we did go ahead and pick this up for $12.99. We have a SanDisk USB drive, because remember, we had to stay under our budget of $500, so we went with a small USB drive versus solid state drive. This is a 16 gigabyte, and this guy right here went for a whopping $6.80. Our power supply is a very small 𝐓𝐸 460 watt bronze. Now, this is not modular in any way. It is a bronze 80 power supply, but it fit within our budget, and it will go ahead and power our motherboard and our riser with 1 GPU. As we talked about in our last video, some of the parts in this build will really only support 1 GPU, and some of them will give us some scalability to grow. But I wanted to go ahead and balance that out between all of our parts moving forward, because most of the parts you would need to be scalable were going to cost a lot more money and didn't fit within our $500 budget. Here is our 1 GPU riser, is what we purchased here, right off of Amazon. It comes with the USB A to A. It comes with our PCI adapter card there, and then it also, of course, comes with our riser, which has 2, 4, 6, 8 total capacitors, has LED indicators on it, and has the reinforced PCI slot. And finally, it comes with this, which is SATA to 6-pin, and we're going to put this where it belongs, right there. Finally, here is the GPU that we purchased. So this, guys, is the MSI GTX 1660 Ti. It's the OC version, has 6 gigabytes of memory, which is going to go ahead and allow us to mine Ethereum, and it has a 6-pin on it. We were able to go ahead and negotiate this down on Facebook Marketplace for a whopping $225. Heck yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and get our overhead camera set up, and let's go ahead and build this rig step by step. All right, miners, let's go ahead and jump into our build. So today we're going to kind of bring things down to a very much beginner level. That's my goal for today's video. So some of these items may be very simplistic for some of you guys. My traditional audience is they've built plenty of mining rigs, and so this is really going to be something that they've heard a million times. But my focus in today's video is to really talk to the beginner, someone who's interested in getting into crypto mining, who at least has a little bit of experience building a computer before. You don't need to have built a mining rig before, but a computer's perfect. You know, a lot of this isn't really rocket science. It's just going through the normal steps and routines. So we got this 𝐓𝐸𝐴 Z97X motherboard within our Facebook Marketplace purchase. It does have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total PCI slots. In today's video, we're only going to be using one. Because of the fact that we're using one GPU, but it does give us some room for scalability and growth. So jumping in, we have our CPU, which, as we discussed in our previous video, is actually an i5, and we have 8 gigs of memory. Nothing too crazy, nothing too special. So we are going to be installing our CPU cooler today, and this cooler is nothing insane. It's literally an Arctic Alpine 12. I've used a lot of Arctic fans before and been very happy with them. This was within our budget, $12.99. Now, even if our budget was $2,000, I would still buy one of these. I don't need to have anything crazy to cool my CPU if I'm not CPU mining and just GPU mining. So this is a great purchase. So we're gonna go ahead and install this first and do all the work before we mount it into our frame, because it's so much easier to deal with this before we get it into our frame versus, you know, once it's in the frame, we're trying to work around, you know, everything. So this one's nice because it does have thermal paste installed on it already. And before you go, oh, that's low quality. Well, actually, it actually shows you right on the box that the thermal paste is actually MX4, which is exactly what I have in my thermal paste bag here. So that's perfect. I love it. So we're going to go ahead and remove this little plastic shroud on here. There we go. That's trash. And we're set and ready to go. Now, this is set up perfectly for this motherboard. You want to make sure you check your sockets when you are building it to make sure your CPU cooler, of course, matches the CPU, and the CPU matches and is compatible with your motherboard there. So we're going to go ahead and do ours, get everything lined up, which is nice and easy. Okay, so our CPU cooler is installed and ready to go. We'll just go ahead and plug in the fan here on the side. And next thing we're ready to do is jump on to our frame. Okay, so our frame comes with everything we need, and our next step is we want to mount our motherboard into our frame. So in a traditional motherboard, you're going to have holes in the motherboard. 1, 2, 3, and then you got some through the middle and some through the back side. So you're going to put a screw through there, but you don't go into the frame, you actually go into anchors. So our mining frame comes with everything we need, and in this pack there are some gold anchors. So all you need to do is line up the holes on the frame with where the anchors go, and then you can go ahead and get them in place, put your motherboard on, and screw them in. Okay guys, so our motherboard anchors are installed. As you can see here, these are the gold items, and we're gonna go ahead and take our motherboard, and everything lines up with the pattern on our motherboard here. We'll line them up with the holes of the gold anchors, and we'll install our screws. Okay, so we are ready to go ahead and install our power supply. So today, as we discussed previously, we are using the EVGA 460 BP80 bronze power supply. Very small power supply, not only when it comes down to the total watts, but also in size compared to a traditional ATX power supply. It is not modular, so we have a whole bundle of cables to work with today. In addition to that, we will be installing this in the 3 holes. We have 1, 2, 3 total holes on the frame. On the back side of your power supply, you'll line that up with the 1, 2, 3, 4 total holes that we have here, and we'll go ahead and screw it in with the supplied screws that do come with the power supply. I do recommend that you make sure when you install your power supply that you don't block the back side here or the top side here, as they do act as intake and exhaust. So the power supply is installed. You can see we're secured and good to go. We can access our power button here, and we'll go ahead and have accessibility to the plug on this side. So now when we go ahead and flip this over, we have quite a bit of cables to deal with. So we're not going to use all of these cables. We actually should go ahead and separate these up. So we have a SATA cable that we're not going to go ahead and use because we don't have a hard drive other than the USB drive, so we don't need to use that. We also have a Molex cable, and we don't have that because we don't have any additional cooling fans, so we're not going to use that one there. We have an additional SATA cable. We don't need that one. Now we do have a PCI cable that we're going to use for powering our riser and also our GPU, so we're going to put that over here. We have a CPU cable that we're going to plug into our motherboard, and we have a 24 pin that we are going to plug into our motherboard as well. Okay, so jumping ahead, we went ahead and installed our CPU 8-pin in the front and our 24-pin motherboard plug in the back. Now I did go ahead and bundle up all the rest of those cables and did use Velcro and just tuck them off to the side here, simple and easy. And the last cable that you guys see here just freely sitting is the PCI cable that we will use to power the riser and also the GPU. Now as time goes on and we decide to expand on just one card and you start to look at spending a little bit more money, nicer power supplies, beefier ones, higher quality, actually have, they call them modular power supplies, which means all these cables are not even there, and you just pick and choose with a plug as to which ones you want. I love those. Those are fantastic for mining rigs because the less cables, the better, with airflow and just with congestion for your cables in your mining rigs. I mean, think of it, we're not even using half of these cables here. They're just sitting bundled up. Okay, so let's go ahead and install our GPU riser. These are two of the parts that come with the GPU riser. We have our USB A to A cable and our PCI adapter card. These go ahead and connect together, simple and easy. You can't really do this the wrong way. The next step is we want to install this into the first PCI slot on our motherboard. Now keep in mind, you want to make sure that the clip here is in the very front. So this right here is in the very front, facing towards the front of the motherboard. You don't want to do it backwards. So I'm going to go ahead and install that here. It slides in and will fit perfectly. You can't really install this incorrectly. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to route this through underneath of our support bar and on the back side, and we're just going to lay this towards the back. So now our next step is our GPU riser. So the GPU riser is going to sit somewhere in here. What I'm going to do is for my first setup, I'm actually going to position mine all the way to the side here in my case. So let's go ahead and move this over. Because of the fact that it's away from the CPU for any heat and it's away from the power supply, we'll go ahead and put it on the far right of our frame. Alrighty guys, we are ready for our graphics card. This is probably the most exciting part of doing the build. So once again, this is the MSI GeForce GTX 1660 Ti overclock, and we're going to go ahead and install our GPU riser right into the bottom here. So we're going to take our riser and we're going to line it up and push down. When you hear that snap, you know that that's securely in place. Our next step is to install our power on the back side, as well as the USB that we went ahead and laid towards the back. Okay, so now we're going to install the USB cable right on the back side of the GPU riser. We'll just plug that in. And now we're going to take our PCI cable, and it's labeled right actually on the back side of that cable, and we're going to plug it directly into the GPU riser on the back side. And you'll hear it click, you know that that's secure. Make sure you push that in far enough. You don't want any gaps. Now, the downside of my situation, and I didn't anticipate, and that this happens all the time building graphics cards, is my other PCI connection is too short. Well, the nice thing is that we do have companies out there that do sell extenders, and this was not in my budget, so tisk tisk on me. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this extender to extend the PCI connection. Even though there's a splitter, we won't utilize the splitter part, but we'll extend it from here and then we'll connect into our 8-pin on our graphics card. Okay, so my extender's installed, and I went ahead and just zip tied back the extension cable and the splitter part that we're not using. So now we're ready to go ahead and install the graphics card. Now we have plenty of room to work with. We only got one GPU. So we can install this on any of these screws that are available here to us. There's just holes right here and they line up with the graphics card. Okay, so our graphics card is installed and set and ready to go. The last step we need to do is we do need to take our quote hard drive, or in this case our USB drive, and we do need to install HIVEOS on it. If you're using Windows, you can go ahead and do Windows, but we're using HIVEOS. Now, I have an entire step-by-step guide on how to do this using Boolean Etcher. I'm going to put a link in the upper right-hand corner as well as down below, as it is a pretty lengthy step-by-step process, but we do take it down to a basic level so that anybody can go ahead and do it and understand it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and when we come back, we'll plug this in, and we'll go ahead and boot our mining rig for the first time. Okay guys, so we have our USB drive plugged in and ready to go. We have the monitor running from our GPU down and actually into this small little screen. These are amazing. They're 7-inch screens, and it actually gets power from the actual motherboard itself as well. If you guys are interested in one of these, I love these as I've been getting into mining. I'll put a link down below for it. We also have our power running into our power supply here, and we also have the power button, as we talked about previously, Velcroed off to the side. Now, I want to be entirely transparent with you guys. I ended up having to replace the motherboard. I actually had an additional one available in my inventory in stock. Here's the one that we started the video out with, and here's the one we currently have. MSI, this one's the Z97X, and this one is the Z170A. So what actually happened was I booted with this one, and I was getting a 99 error at boot, and I couldn't figure it out. I spent 3 hours, all of last night actually, trying to get it figured out, and finally I decided it was time to put it aside and to move on. So we are using, for the remainder of our video, the Z170, the MSI. We are using an i3 6100T processor, and we do have our Alpine or our Arctic here CPU that is installed. Everything else pretty much the same. I'll put links to this motherboard. The memory is a little different, and the CPU. I'll put all those down below if you guys are interested in these, as they are a tad different from here. I will say I did test this at length before the video, but of course things happen, and it's always good. Lesson learned as a miner, it's always good to have additional hardware available to get yourself back up and running. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to turn on our power here. Now I think I do need to do it, yep, over here on the surge protector. Switch is on our power supply. I can actually start to see a light coming on near the network adapter, and let's power this on. All right, we are up and running. You can see we got some lights on there. Our GPU is coming on, our CPU is spinning. And now we just have to wait for our monitor. It looks like our monitor is coming up. Look at that, HIVEOS, perfect. I like it. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump onto the computer, and we will go through configuring this in HIVEOS to get ourselves up and mining Ethereum. Okay, so we've gone ahead and loaded up the HIVEOS website, and now we're ready to go ahead and take a look at our rig. So our rig is called Triage, that's right down here. I think the name is fitting, and you can see that we have our MSI GeForce GTX 1660 Ti. Now we do need to keep in mind this does has Micron memory, so that will directly affect when it comes down to what overclock settings we use. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put in a flight sheet. So I'm going to go to flight sheet, and then I'm going to go to flight sheets, and we're going to create a new one. We're going to select Ethereum. We're going to select our wallet, which is we use Exodus. We're going to select Ethermine. You can use any of the ones that you prefer. This is just what I like to use. All of them have their pros and cons. And because this is an NVIDIA GPU, we're going to select T-Rex Miner. Then we're going to name it. So I'm going to go ahead and call it Triage, which I like to do for the name of the rig so I can follow it quickly. Ethereum, and I'm going to put my wallet here. Okay. We'll go ahead and click Create Flight Sheet. Awesome. So now we need to go back to our wallet, or back to our worker, I'm sorry, Triage, and we're going to go to Flight Sheets, and now we need to find that new one, and I actually need to add an E in there. There we go. And we're going to hit Send It to the Moon. That will apply it to the rig. So we went through the steps to create the flight sheet, and now we're applying it to the rig. So you can see here, it's got all the information needed, the wallet address, as well as the pool servers. So if we go back now, what's actually happening is it is actually installing the T-Rex miner, and then it's going to go ahead and start mining. Okay, and we are off mining right now. You can see on the left-hand side, this is actually the miner screen within HIVEOS, and we can see that we are mining. In addition to that, we can see on the right-hand side that we do have about 25.54 mega hash, and that says at 102 watts. Now, these are completely default ones. You don't want to mine on stock settings. You actually want to overclock your card. So what you do is you overclock the graphics card to get more aggressive settings, to get better hash rate, and then you undervolt it in order to get the watts as low as possible. I have quite a few guides on this within HIVEOS. I'll put them down below, but let me get this card overclocked and undervolted so that we can maximize profitability. So we went ahead and overclocked our 6600 Ti. It puts us at 31.64, so a nice significant difference there, over 6.5 mega hash difference just from overclocking the card, as well as undervolting it. As you guys can see, we're now down in the software to be at 68 watts. But let's talk about profitability here. And we will be doing a follow-up video in 2 weeks talking about the profitability of this rig. But let's go ahead and take a look here. So right now, 31.64. So we're going to come over to the website, What to Mine, and we're going to put in here under Ethereum, 31.64. Now, something to keep in mind is we want to put the watts of my entire rig at this point, because we don't just want to use the GPU when it comes down to the total watts used. You know, over here, we said 68 watts within HIVEOS, but that's just the GPU. That is not the entire rig. I have a voltage meter. I'll show you once we're finished up here in this part of the video. And the voltage meter is plugged in, and that's what the power supply is actually plugged into to give us true, accurate numbers as to the electricity that is used for this rig. So right now, we're using 99.8 watts at 31.64 mega hash. Now, we're going to use 0.10 for our energy cost, just as an industry norm. Mine is actually 0.057. Let's hit calculate. And for Ethereum, we can see per day that we are making $1.14 off of this graphics card. Now, we do need to take electricity costs into mind. So at the current electricity rate of the 0.10, that is 24 cents per day, leaving us a total profit of 90 cents. Okay, so markets are down, difficulty is super high. This isn't the most profitable, but this is a great spot to get started with crypto mining. So here is the voltage meter that I mentioned in the previous video clip there. So we have that plugged into our surge protector, and then the power runs directly into the power supply there. So this gives us more accurate readings as to the total amount of watts being used. If I just use the graphics card and just the 68 watts in the software, it would be inaccurate. We would not be accounting for the additional 30 some watts, and we wouldn't actually be getting true profitability numbers. So that does it, guys. We have ourselves our $500 crypto mining rig. I am super happy with this. Big win on the 1660 Ti for $225. Unfortunately, the motherboard situation's rough, but we were able to get by to continue out our video for you guys with the MSI Z170A. I am actually thrilled about this frame. I really like this little mini frame here. I mean, this is one GPU on here. With some of these older generation cards that are smaller, we could fit 6 no problem, and that would work out really, really well. And it even has the holes here for putting in fans if we want to add some cooling in the front of this rig. Well, guys, that's going to go ahead and do it for today. We are going to follow up on this in 2 weeks and talk about exactly how much we have made. I do have this mining to an entirely separate wallet right now so that we can go ahead and benchmark this properly. So I will see you guys in 2 weeks. If you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. And finally, don't forget to subscribe. Take care.